Hello everyone and welcome to Whispers of War, show number 40. I'm your host Sil, and let's jump into how was my weekend. Wow. Truth be told, I haven't played much World of Warcraft last week. I fear that the Sims 4 and all their add-ons for it have really pulled me in. I think I might even find something like a skin morpher that I can make night elves in that game, or something similar, or blood elves, you know. That's how bad it is. But I did do a few things in the world of Azeroth. I am still working on my rep, slowly but steadily. I'm seeing the end line now, so hopefully I'll have Colteran humans soon, and that's another character then I have to level, I guess. But to help with the leveling, I actually downloaded Azeroth of Autopilot, that's the add-on, on recommendation from Jarv and Bella. And I have to say, questing on a lobby is going really quick, because you don't really have to think of it. You just need to do the quest, and you click on the NPCs, and everything is done for you. It's very quick, and it gives you a route and everything. So yeah, I'm actually quite liking it, and I think I will use that for my little leveling project with the Dark Iron Shaman. I still don't know what flavor of Shaman I should play. I'm very tempted to go Ellie, just because it's something different, you know, standing in the distance. So maybe I'm going to try that and see how that plays. But that is really it for what I've done in World of Warcraft. I think I have a little bit of classic withdrawal. I really want to play classic. And since it won't let me, I'm venturing into other things. But I'm sure once I start leveling one of my lobbies and really get into that, that's it. You know, I just need a little project. However, it's not going to be a short show, because I have a very long but also very entertaining interview with the lovely Kevin. Or Ringmaster Kevin, as we also like to call him. So I will leave you with that, and then afterwards I'll come back with some of your answers on Twitter. So with me today, I'm being joined by someone I've known for, I think, several years now, I would like to say.
Many years, yes.
Many years. We're not going to age ourselves with that. You might recognize his voice. I have the wonderful Ringmaster Kevin here.
Yay! Thank you for having me on your show. I'm very excited to finally join you on the Whispers of War, because I think many years ago, not to age ourselves, you know, when you were part of the Girls Gone WoW podcast, was when we first met and were able to speak, not necessarily in person, but over the internet together.
I know, and I mean, we've been on your show and vice versa. It's just been years now. Yes,
quite a while.
Yes, but it's really lovely having you on again. So let's just start with the beginning. If people don't know you, can you tell a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I kind of have this self-given title, Ringmaster Kevin, and that comes from me being one of the hosts on the Darkmoon Herald podcast, where we cover the crazy circus known as Warcraft. It is a kind of zany variety show, Warcraft exclusive podcast. I know there's not too many of those left out there. But yeah, we have a great time. We have games, and we have really cool, fun segments like the Sideshow of Suck, where we talk about something stupid that we've done in game. Like, for instance, run additional time-walking dungeons after we already completed the quest. I'm not saying that I just did that this last week, but it may or may not have happened. You know, and we have some great segments like Sil, you participated in our Bloodlust or Heroism segment.
True.
Where you get to rant about or rave about whatever you love or hate in Warcraft for 2 minutes. So it's a really great variety show. We have wonderful guests on, like Sil or the other Girls Gone WoW crew in the past. You know, we've had like Coltrane and the CTR guys. I mean, we've had many guests from many other podcasts over the years. We've been around for about 6 years now.
Wow.
And shoot, we weren't supposed to age
Well,
ourselves.
6 years. That doesn't make me feel that old.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just a really fun zany podcast. Check it out, darkmoonherald.com. And my co-host Sal, who is also a host on the Converted podcast, is just a delight. She is a fantastic podcaster herself, and so it's a really great show. Make sure that you check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so happy to hear that Sal was on the Darkmoon Herald as well, because of course I've talked to her in the past as well.
Oh yeah.
And now I know from Sal that I think she still is a die-hard Alliance player.
Her blood is so blue, it is amazing. She is almost my antithesis right now, because when I started podcasting, my heart was black, and man, did I bleed red for the Horde. Like, there was nothing you could say or do that would get me to roll Alliance in Warcraft. It was Horde all the way. I mean, hell, I'm sitting next to my life-size replica Doomhammer with my Horde pennant on the right side, Lady Sylvanas stuff all over my office. So it's like, in my heart of hearts, I'm definitely a hardcore Hordey. But Sal and my previous co-host Reb, they were such powerhouse Alliance ladies that it was just so much fun to have that duality on the podcast, that it's not like, oh yeah, you Horde all day long, and they're like, hell no, man, it's all about the Alliance. And if you talk with people who love the opposing faction, you start to see like, oh, I guess there are some redeeming qualities to the Alliance. Maybe I will check that out so I can interact with them in game. Oh, there is a reason why people either play a tall human or a short human or a fat human or a regular human. Like, there's reasons.
Exactly. Or a pointy-eared human. You have that as well.
Yes, the pointy-eared humans.
No, it's very good. I think like I think in the past I've been, I wouldn't say die-hard Alliance, but I've been pretty much Alliance, and then I switched to Horde because trolls.
Yeah.
And I think you and I have a fondness for this race, don't we?
Well, it helps that they're the best. And
it does.
There's really no beating around the bush. They're one of the, I think, if not the oldest races in Azeroth, and I'm not counting the dwarves, back when they were still in their stone form before the Curse of Flesh. But I mean, like, they're the oldest civilization. The elves evolved from the trolls. So, I mean, they had like the first empires across Azeroth, and they are a major powerhouse. They're such a diverse group of people, because you have like the ice trolls and the sand trolls and the Zandalari and the Amani, and the list just goes on, and the lore that has been developed with the Loa, and even now in Battle for Azeroth. I mean, one of the really awesome things about this expansion has been the development of troll lore, because like we get a little bit of troll lore. It really started back with Zul'Gurub and then Zoloman. We got the Amani and the Gurabashi trolls, and a little bit of their lore, and then it just expanded out, and we got a little bit more with the trolls up in Northrend, and then the explosion of troll lore when the Zandalari were working with the Mogu in Mists of Pandaria, and then it kind of died off in Legion, and that made me very sad at heart. I'm like, where's my troll dungeons? Like, I need my troll raid and my troll dungeons, and it's gosh, I love the trolls so much. But then here we go, we are going to Zandalar, like the promised land. Like this, I don't know if you felt this way, Sil, but going to Zandalar was tantamount in my mind to like players going to Northrend to fight the Lich King for the first time. Like, this was going to the fabled land that I have dreamed of seeing and experiencing. And
absolutely,
it is not disappointed at all.
You know what it is? I think we've heard so much about the Zandalari. I think also because from just the dark spirit. You hear a lot about the Zandalari and with Zul and all of those things. It's just really interesting. I think that the fact that the Loa are so present there, that makes it even more like, I think for anyone who really is into their trolls, it just makes it so much more like real almost.
Yeah, it almost makes it so that there's no mystery left about the trolls and how they operate. You know, for a while there, like there was like this almost like ever present but just out of reach character of Wan Samdi. Like that there were little tastes of Vol'jin talking to him and stuff like that in the book Shadows of the Horde, the Vol'jin novel. And it's like, oh man, that's such a cool character. I wanted to know more about it, and now we have a lot more about it, but it's the expansion is answering all the questions, and it's almost getting to the point where, you know, I'm afraid that they're going to turn around and be like, yeah, guess what? It's all metachlorians, kids. And it's like, nah, please, like, don't Star Wars ruin this with too much of like a scientific explanation. Leave it mystical. Yeah, no,
I think that would be the better way of doing it, indeed, because I mean, look at the Night Elf and their ancients. We've seen those, like Malorn and all those have been in game, and you know they haven't ruined that. So I was a bit like, well, if we get the Loa, if they keep it like the ancients, then it should be all good. And so far they haven't disappointed, at least for me.
The only bummer part was that they killed off the was it Tortola, whichever the turtle Loa is.
Oh yeah. I think it's Tortola.
He died before we could get to him.
Yeah, that was a shame.
That was a big bummer because, you know, you have like Hyreek and you have the Kragwa. I love Kragwa. And like all these really cool Loa, and the way that they see, I kind of have like a game of not old Game of Thrones, not new Game of Thrones, an old Game of Thrones feeling, because the way and the reason that they killed off the turtle Loa was really great as far as part of the story. And the fact that, you know, it's such a huge creature, and then we go into his shell and we got to fight off the blood elves, and the blood elves are using the blood in order to, you know, conjure all this stuff. Like, awesome. Like, I love this story. I just weep for the fact that we did not get to learn more about that particular Loa, and that he was already gone before we got there. Yeah,
I agree. But then at least, you know, you still get in touch with the Tortolans.
Right.
You get at least a little bit more about all of that. A little bit.
Yeah.
And every time that you have to, you know, guide another turtle to the water.
But now we kill the turtles.
That's true. Oh. I feel really rotten about that.
I do too. It's like the weirdest bait and switch. It's like I've been killing crabs for, well, my Warcraft experience. I mean, crabs have always been bad in Warcraft.
Exactly.
And coming up here, now we need to murder these little turtles, and then we're going to get a crab mount? What is going on? Like, why do we flip the script here?
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure about how I feel about it all. So, would you say that you are now bifactional, or do you still say, no, I'm still mainly a Horde player?
Well... for a while there, I was thinking that I was bifactional. I have max level characters on both Horde and Alliance, and that was initially driven by the fact that, like, back in Cataclysm, I lost my guild, I lost the friends that I played with in game. Like, just playing Horde, I lost all of my networking Horde side. And so I said, screw this, I'm going to start an Alliance character. And so then I played Alliance and got him up to max level. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of story and a great way to re-experience a lot of stuff in World of Warcraft that I hadn't seen before. And then Mists of Pandaria came out, and then they had the whole dual quest line where you had to have 2 max level characters, one of each faction, in order to see the whole story. Be like, wait a second, Anduin isn't dead? What the hell? You know, like a bell fell on him. He's just a little boy. Why isn't he crushed? Kind of thing. So ever since then, I've kind of considered myself on the bifactional side because I've maintained max level characters on both sides. I try to have classes on the Alliance that I don't have on the Horde, so there's a reason to go back and forth. Like I don't just have like 2 paladins on both sides. So like right now I have a max level Draenei priest on the Alliance, and then my Death Knight and paladin on the Horde. I know I need to get to leveling more of my alts, but I'm kind of I got that 6 and 6 or 7 and 7, 8 and 8, whatever the even split down of the classes is now. I have that.
Okay.
On Alliance and the Horde. So, but if you go to like BlizzCon and, you know, like when Chris Metzen's up on stage, or when he was up on stage and he'd yell, you know, like, for the Alliance, I'd be like, yay. And then we'd say, for the Horde. And, or more specifically, in the Battle for Azeroth trailer, when Sylvanas screams for the Horde, that's when like my face got flushed, my stomach dropped, and a blood-curdling scream just came out of my lips for the Horde.
Nice.
So yeah, I play Alliance, I am Horde.
Yeah, you know what? I actually feel exactly the same way. Like I play Alliance, but I feel Horde. Okay, so how did you start your whole love for World of Warcraft? How did that all happen?
Well, it was a slow burn for a long time, and we went on a couple dates, you know, and at first I wasn't all in, but it grew on me over time. And the way this happened is when World of Warcraft came out, I had played the RTSs of Warcraft 1 and 2, dabbled a little bit in 3, but I'm just like, this is so stupid because it's not StarCraft. And StarCraft is such a better game. Why would anybody play Warcraft? Like, come out with a World of StarCraft, I'll subscribe to that, but I'm not about to pay $15 a month to play World of Warcraft. Who cares? And so that's why I didn't jump on the bandwagon right away. And then my brother, he bought World of Warcraft for me for my birthday. He's like, I'm playing MMOs. And he switched from Final Fantasy 11 over to World of Warcraft. And he goes, I understand why I couldn't get you to play Final Fantasy 11, but everything that you complained about this game, or for that game, has been fixed in World of Warcraft. So you're going to play this, shut up, and make an account. I said, all right, well, if you buy it for me, like I'll play it. Why not? Free game is a free game. I have a month. And so I started playing, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, like, my friend Joe was like, oh my gosh, you're playing World of Warcraft? I want to play World of Warcraft. My cousin plays World of Warcraft. Let's do this thing. And so then he was all in. And then my other friend Andy and his wife Tammy were just like, yeah, let's play Warcraft. Like, because they were big fans of the RTS. And I guess they had all just been waiting for me to like hit the green light. Like, let's do this, guys. And so then, bam, I had like a group of 5, and we got into this guild called the Ancients, and it was on the server Anvilmar. And they were such an awesome and inviting guild, even though for a while I was just Kadab's brother. And it just, when you play a game with friends, you just want to continue wanting to play it. And so the more I played it, the more I got into it. And I started with a troll. Well, technically I started with a Tauren, but he died like 20 times to harpies and Mulgore. And so I said, screw this. And then I started a troll shaman named Old Scratch. And it was so much fun running around with my friends, playing, getting lost in Wailing Caverns. And it just kept going until I became like a leader in the guild, and it just developed more and more. And then I'm like, oh, this Warcraft lore is pretty sweet. And I started reading the books. And once I started reading like Arthas and Lord of the Clans, and just really getting into the novels, that's what really cemented me as far as like, yes, I am all in on this universe now. Like, I get it. And yeah, and from there it just spiraled way, way, way out of control, according to my wife.
I feel that same reaction from my boyfriend when I talk about Walter's eyes when I say all of that. Okay. And of course, it got us to have you podcast about it as well.
Yes. Me deciding to podcast, that was a weird thing because I initially started playing Warcraft when I was living in one part of Southern California, and then I moved down to San Wherever looking for a job. And during that move is when my brother bought me Warcraft. So basically when I moved to San Wherever is when I started playing World of Warcraft. And I used to live within a couple miles of my best friend. And then I moved. And so we're like, okay, we need to figure out a way to like keep in touch, because we're not good at keeping in touch unless there's something that has to engage us. And because we're dudes, and keeping in touch is not our thing. So we thought, oh, you know what? Here, we both started playing Warcraft. Let's blog about it. And we'll write we'll write a couple blogs, and we'll have a bunch of readers responding to the blogs, and that'll be so much fun, and that'll be great. And nobody ever responded to the blog. And it turns out we're not good at writing articles for blogs. And we were also listening to podcasts at the time in order to get the news. One of the podcasts that I was listening to was this weird one from across the pond. It was called Girls Gone WoW. And there was that one, and then there was like Horde for Life and Hearthcast and all these and of course the Instance. And I was listening to these podcasts, and my friend Joe and I thought, wait a second, we suck at writing, but we're fairly good at talking because we're both teachers. So let's go that route. Like, let's powwow together and put together a podcast to talk about Warcraft. That way we can be playing in game and stay connected that way, and then we can talk about it on a podcast, and we'll bring in our other friend, John Walsh, and it'll be great. And we'll Walsh will do the tech side, Joe will do the editing, I'll do the show notes, and bam, we're like a tripod of awesomeness. And so we started, it was called Nerdfire Productions because we had that triangle thing going on. And we called it Powwow. And where we put the POW in WoW podcasting. That was our little hook line. And that was a lot of fun. We started doing that until I had a falling out with Joe. And once we had the falling out, I tried to continue doing powwow, but he sent me an email saying like, hey, this is something we did together, you're not going to do it by yourself. So you can't, do not use the name, do not use any of that stuff that we set up. And I said, okay, well, I'm enjoying podcasting too much to just stop. I'm going to start something new. And that's where myself and Kelp Keeper Walsh sat down. We had a longtime listener at that point, Upsana, who was very encouraging, and we'd met at BlizzCon. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, I'm a staunch Horde member. You are, a staunch Alliance member. Would you be willing to come on the show and talk about Warcraft? And we could do this new show together. I have no idea what it's called. I have no idea what the premise is, but I just want to continue podcasting. And she said, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I'll have anything to talk about. I'm like, well, do you love Warcraft? She said, yes, of course I love Warcraft. I said, that's enough. just show up and we can talk about Warcraft, and that'll be good enough. And the Darkmoon Herald was born, and I've just been able to continue that. Unfortunately, Apsana had to drop out because of she had to take care of her dad, and she was getting her doctorate in criminology. So she too much real life stuff got in the way, and so then I was able to recruit Reb to the Darkmoon Herald because I had to keep that Alliance Lady trend going. And Reb is just awesome. And then she started having kids, and real life got in the way. And then I was able to recruit Sal, and that's where we are today. So, long story.
Long but a good. I mean, I love the Darkmoon Herald. How did you come up with the name for it?
It was about the time where we were coming up with the Darkmoon Herald was during Cataclysm, and the Mists of Pandaria announcements were just coming out, and one of the big things that came with the Cataclysm was a revamp of the Darkmoon Fair. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the Darkmoon Fair wasn't this stupid little thing that you just turn cards into next to Thunderbluff anymore. Sorry, that's my Horde side perspective. It was like its own thing. It was awesome. It was fun. Well, it still is fun. You had the carnival games and they didn't have the carousel yet, but so it was something new and cool in game. And so that kind of inspired, like, hey, what's something that's new and awesome in game that's going on? And I was pushing pretty hard for the Void Storage podcast, because that was something else that we just gotten in game was Void Storage. Luckily, Kelp Keeper Walsh and another friend of mine who played the game, CJ, they ixnayed that one. I'm like, no, come on, guys, it'll be a really cool name. They're like, no, not Void Storage. And I'm happy that they ixnayed that one on me. But yeah, so I'm like, okay, let's go with the Darkmoon Fair theme. And there's actually a character in game, a Darkmoon Herald. And so I was like, oh, that works really good. Like, I tried a bunch of other names, like the Darkmoon announced. I can't even think of any of the other Darkmoon variants that I came up with at the time. But yeah, basically when we came onto the idea of using the Darkmoon Fair, and then specifically the Darkmoon Herald, it kind of lent itself and all the other pieces of the puzzle fit together. Like, how are we going to theme the podcast? The intro, sound bumper that I use. Walsh and my brother put that one together like almost immediately. It was a one script, first draft, first take kind of thing. It was incredible. And it's like, okay, so I can take these elements that I had from Powwow and I can put it with a fair theme. And like, we went from 120 Unleashed to Bloodluster Heroism. This is why I suck to the sideshow of suck. So I was able to tie everything together under a theme in the podcast, and that made everything just fit in this nice little package that I'm like, oh, damn, like, this will work. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as we started moving in that direction, everything fell into place like pieces in a puzzle, and we just were able to slam it and hit the ground running.
And you have for many years, because it's a very successful podcast, and it's, like I said, a lot of people should just, if you haven't listened to it just yet, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You need to start listening to it, because it's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you.
Okay, now, so we've talked a bit about the past, and when I asked you, okay, we need to have a main topic to talk about, you had lots of things that you wanted to talk about, but in the end you picked a really good subject. So you said, why don't we talk about how WoW and we have changed over the last decade, and how we have grown, and what needed to be different for better or for worse. So what made you pick this topic?
Well, I've been watching or reading a lot of comments regarding WoW Classic. Mm-hmm. A lot of streamers and blog writers and YouTubers have been going through the WoW Classic beta and just saying like, oh, like we thought this was going to be rose-colored glasses, but this is really an awesome game. It forces people to group up. You're immersed and all this great stuff. And I was listening to it. I'm like, yeah, that is what I remember, and that would be awesome. But I can't play that game anymore. Because my life is way different now than it was 15 years ago when this game came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, 15 years ago, I was a school teacher in Southern California. I taught middle school. I lived in a 2-bedroom condo with my newlywed wife, with almost no responsibilities past keeping my wife happy. And that's where I kind of started my Warcraft career, was going from being a teacher and then having a desk job where then I got laid off, and then I picked up a desk job where my brother worked, and I'm just like, oh, this is so painful. And so all I did was like research and think about Warcraft all throughout the day before I could then go home and actually play the game, with all my friends that were still online, and I would spend hours. And once Burning Crusade came out, it's just like more of my time was consumed by Warcraft. I'd spend hours and hours, and then I had my first child. Some of you, if you listen to the Darkmoon Herald, New Troll. He was born about a year after I started playing Warcraft, and it was really a funny thing, and kind of like I look back at it kind of laughing, but there's also a little bit of shame that comes in, because it's like I have a distinct memory of raiding Gruul's lair with my team while trying to rock New Troll in his little baby carrier, singing songs to him so he wouldn't cry. And I'm like, oh, that's funny how I'm like multitasking, and he needed to sleep anyway, but it's like, why wasn't I taking that time and focusing it on my son? And it was also during that time when I was raiding in I was still a hardcore raider through Burning Crusade, and then my daughter was born during Wrath of the Lich King. And that was when my wife and I were living in a 2-bedroom condo. I'd gotten another job teaching again. I'd been podcasting, and my wife was like, okay, you know what? You've been playing this game too much, and I feel like it's your mistress. I'm going to take the kids and go up to my mom's in LA until you figure your crap out. And it was at that point I figured my crap out really fast. I mean, really fast. That was okay. I'm like, I sent a message to my raid leader. Like, I logged straight off, and I'm like, okay, now I'm paying attention to you. I mean, oh my gosh, such a bad time. I was such an idiot. And I turned around and messaged my raid leader and was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm out. And I'm like, I need to focus on my family and my wife and my kids and going forward. And so when these streamers and stuff are looking back at WoW Classic, I'm thinking about it, going like, okay, if WoW Classic, obviously is going to be a game, would I be able to play it the way I did back then and still have the same like accomplishments and enjoyment of the game? Or would it suck me down into that black hole of where, in order to do things that you feel are an accomplishment in game, I have to completely forsake the rest of my life? And I don't feel that if even it, like, and I'm gonna play classic WoW, but if if I went into a 40-man raid or tried to do a 40-man raid and joined up with a guild like that, there's no way I could participate in that and still give my family the time and interest that they deserve. And especially now, it's like I'm no longer a teacher. You know, I taught for 7 years, but now I'm a police officer with a fluctuating schedule. I have 3 kids now. And one new troll, like, he's not a little baby that I can just sit in a little bassinet while I play Warcraft. Like, no, it's like we got to go to Boy Scouts and Little League, and my daughter has her dance lessons, and I have to maintain a yard, and like, so I started thinking about all this, and then I looked at the game that Warcraft is now, and I go, I can play Warcraft as it is because of the changes that they've made to it. I wouldn't be able to have continued playing Warcraft if it had stayed the way it was. And I feel that, like, all the changes that they've made in Warcraft, making it so that it's easier to play as like a single player game. You don't have to group up as much because, you know, people are so spread out throughout the entire game that you know, you used to, before they did all the sharding and stuff and the cross realm zones, you used to have to go through zone after zone after zone and never see another player. So when there were those kinds of group quests like they have in Classic, there are no players to group up with. You know, back in the day, everybody was low level. So, you know, you're fighting over mobs and that sucks. But you can group up in order to get stuff done. Later, you weren't fighting over mobs because there's nobody around, but you can't group up to do the group content.
Do you feel like WoW has progressed more into and I know some people get their hairs like up when I say this, but do you feel like WoW has progressed more into a solo player game?
Like Skyrim?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, I mean, it has. It has become, I should say, there is an aspect of World of Warcraft that is a single-player game. And I really appreciate that single-player game is there. To be able to have a single-player game that has no end to it is fantastic. It's a great thing that I can sit down and do what I need to do and do what I want to do and do what I find is fun in game, and then log off after a half hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, you know, whatever. That's great. But there's still, you know, all the battlegrounds, you know, PvP, raiding, all this group content is still there, especially with the introduction of mythic dungeons. So the great part about the current rendition of World of Warcraft is that it's not exclusively a group up game anymore, because its clientele has aged to the point where we need a multifaceted game. We can't sit there for 4 hours trying to get 40 people together to you know, maybe get to Stitches or the first boss in Naxxramas. That kind of gameplay, it now, back when I was 21, 22, yeah, I could do that. Now that I'm 36, not a chance. There's no way I'm going to happily sit in Ironforge, you know, waiting hours on end to form a group, because, you know, I need a healer, or, you know, yeah. So I feel that Warcraft is certainly not the game that it used to be, but the changes that have made, if you look at the player base that's been playing Warcraft throughout this time, how we have aged with the game. All the different changes that they've made to Warcraft from Classic until now have been in reaction to how we interact with the game. And it all starts to make sense. Now, there are some changes that they made that totally made sense at the time that now don't really make all that much sense. You know, like taking away all group content when you level. Well, they made that change because there was nobody in those zones, and they had no way of putting people in those zones. Now, I feel that when as we level up through these zones, because of the scaling and all the cross-realm zone server stuff that they have, you could put all those elites and the world bosses and like make it really hard to get to Wailing Caverns and all that stuff. You could put that back into the game because the technology has moved up to the point where Blizzard can make it so that we have those players around us to where we can group up with again. So make it so that in Warcraft the game doesn't start at max level. That there is that experience leading up to that. Of course, you know, people have been saying the game doesn't start till max level ever since Burning Crusade.
Everyone says that, especially raiders have said that.
Oh yeah. I remember the first time I hit 70, my guild was like, "Grats, welcome to the game now." I'm like,
Yeah.
What? I've been playing this game for like 7-8 months now. What the heck?
Yeah, no, I remember that feeling that you had to rush to get to endgame because that was where it was at. Because, you know, everything else didn't really matter. And that, in a way, is really doing the game a disservice because you're missing out on a lot.
A lot of content. And that's one of the really great things, you know, again, with Blizzard introducing time walking and the way to go back to some of these old raids and reuse that content and the transmog system and the mounts and the pets and the blah, 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 blah. All of that fun collector stuff. It gets you to re-engage with that old content, which I feel that they need to do, but continue. They need to put a team together in order to just create old quest lines or quest lines that use old areas, old content, and just put in a couple new stories here and there and direct us to that area.
Would you almost say that compared to what Classic WoW is going to be and where, for instance, BFA is at the moment, that we should really have something that is more like a love child between the two and that will cater to almost everyone? Because the feeling I get, and it's like what you said in the beginning, I was really surprised by so many people who played vanilla in the past or started in Burning Crusade, you know, have seen all these changes, realized that, yeah, BFA and Legion, that was really, you know, catering towards things that we really wanted, quality of life changes, and all those things that have made the game a little bit easier for everyone to do what they need to do. Now that they've aged and have different responsibilities. I know all about that. But then seeing the reactions from so many YouTubers, podcasters, and you know, all those other and streamers who have gone back into Classic just to test it out in beta, and they were like, actually, I'm really, really enjoying this, to their own surprise. I've never seen so many YouTubers are saying, you know, my opinion about Classic has drastically changed, and I am just wondering what it is that people all of a sudden have, because I'm the same. I was a bit like, yeah, I'm not going back to that. I will do it for nostalgia reasons, and now I'm like, I can't wait. But I just, you know, I can't put my finger on it. Why?
You know, I will say about the only negative reaction that I've heard about Classic is Usil saying that the models are ugly.
Well, yeah, the models are ugly.
Because they are, yes. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fair enough. See, I would love a Classic version that has the new art assets in it. Like, you know, keep it that way, but make it look pretty at least. Like, come on, you know, like you have StarCraft Remastered. Why can't this be like WoW Classic Remastered? So I mean, that is very small cosmetics aside, because obviously, I can go back and play, Nintendo 64 games, and after the very jarring, first 5 minutes of, my God, look at the polygons, you can see them. You move on, and there's that immersion again, so it's no big deal. But what I think people are really drawn to in WoW Classic, that Blizzard should put back in the game, is challenging world content. Make leveling difficult. And I don't mean like a trudge fest, but like make it so that every pull matters, that you could, because these are the kinds of things that get you more engaged in the game. Is that sense of dread. That was one of the if you remember, one of the big things that people loved about Battle for Azeroth when it first launched was war mode.
Yeah.
Because everybody was turning on war mode, and so when you went out into the world, there was that chance that you would get Rothel stomped out of nowhere. And that put a sense of adventure and a sense of danger when you're out leveling. When you turn off war mode, I'm not afraid of dying as a protection paladin, no matter what I do. And that's not a good, engaging way of playing. WoW Classic, you had elite mobs for no reason right there in the middle of your path. Like, you should be able to run down a road without dying in WoW Classic, except for when Hogger's there, or you turn around and Stitches is murdering your face.
Exactly. It's actually scary.
Yeah.
Doing certain things like, oh, I can't, because we've all been there, that we in current WoW that we're playing, you're watching mostly Netflix, you're just doing auto attacks at times, and it's still fine. There's still so many ways of healing yourself,
Exactly. The world questing that we have right now is tantamount to the level of engagement of fishing in game. I press a button, I press a button, I press a button, and then I move on. It's like there's no thought process to it. You're just there doing a thing, and that's not fun. Having that level of danger, having that excitement, I would love to see in the world content. And of course, all this with the caveat of, once you out level a zone, then you can go back to that zone and Rothel stomp and kill whatever is there. But I don't know if you remember, back in the Eastern Kingdoms in the Hinterlands, there was a troll temple.
Yes.
In Classic, it was filled with elite mobs. And the only way you could get, and it's not anymore, they changed it because you couldn't group up with anybody before there was cross-realm servers, or cross-realm zones. And so, like, you had to have a group of no less than 5 or a couple 60s backing you up to get to the top of this temple. And it was a pain in the butt. Now you can just run up it, no big deal. But if they take that kind of idea where there are these areas with elites, and the only way that you can get through it is by grouping up, and put that as an element of, world quests or the questing in general, essentially outside dungeons, then that would be a great way of engaging people both in the community and in that questing or leveling process, to where you can't just sit there and watch Netflix while trimming your nails and playing the banjo. Like, you have to be engaged in game, and there is a fine line, because there's a serious chunk of the player base that wants that level of engagement every second they log into Warcraft. And then there's also a segment of the population, which sometimes I'm a part of the former, sometimes I'm a part of the latter, where I don't, like I want to be able to have a conversation, listen to a podcast, while I play Warcraft. Or play Warcraft while I'm editing the Darkmoon Herald, so I don't have to be fully engaged in playing the game while still accomplishing things. So that's that fine line that Blizzard really has to walk is, where do you draw that line? Who do you appease? Which is better for the health of the game? And without a whole bunch of analytics, I don't know what the answer is to that.
And it's very difficult because you have to keep your player base happy, because I think we've all seen sometimes the outrage of people who call themselves casuals but still completionists, who have complained about the fact, and I've done it at times as well, that I went like, really, I really have to go into a dungeon for this, to just unlock this,
right.
Whereas some people, I mean, I do it anyway. I just get over myself and just go like, whatever, fine, fine. But there's another big group of people who are like, I don't want that because it gives me serious anxiety, and now I feel like the game is taking that away from me. I mean, I think that, I know it sounds really mean, and I don't mean it like that because I don't mean it offensive, but it is an MMO. So,
you have a phone, don't you? Yeah.
A part of me is a bit like, I understand that, and I completely understand that there are people out there who get very anxious about grouping with people because, let's face it, there are dickbags out there. And
absolutely.
Not nice to be confronted with that while you're trying to just play a game and just get something for yourself and just have fun with that. And I agree, you shouldn't have to be confronted with that. But you are playing a social game, so it is... I can understand why it's very difficult for Blizzard to find that fine-tuning of, okay, well, where do we draw that line, like you said, what can we do without pissing either side off too much?
And, Warcraft is one of those games that has benefited and been a huge detriment to the fact that the internet exists. And where you have a moddable game to where... like WoW Classic, you had to go out and explore and read the quest text and do all this crazy stuff until people invented mods that made all of that irrelevant, pointed you exactly where you needed to go, put a mark on the map, made everything that you needed to do almost automated. And some of those things were really, really great ideas, and so then they baked them into game, or everybody was using them like deadly boss mods. So they have to design the encounters not with, hey, I'm using standard AI, but I remember speaking with Ian Hazzikostas about this, is that they actually design encounters with deadly boss mods in mind. And it's like, that's not how this game should be. Like, that's not how development should be. It's like, hey, if we put this in game, that would be great, except there's this add-on that completely wrecks the entire mechanic. And it's like, I almost feel that, the guides and all that stuff that has been put online has made Warcraft so easy and so accessible. And when was it? I think it was in Lich King. No, it might have been in Cataclysm or Mists of Pandaria, where somebody I knew, I can't remember. It was Control Alt WoW. No, was it Control Alt? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm digressing into my brain cavities here, but there was another podcaster that I was interviewing that he developed a feral druid macro where all he had to hit was the one button and got max DPS.
I remember that. Who was that? I remember hearing that.
Stopcast. It was one of the hosts of Stopcast. And and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me, because I can't work my feral druid like at all. please send me this macro. And then, 5 minutes after using the macro, I'm like, God, this is, I might as well type in like power overwhelming and just call it a day at this point. For those of you who don't know, that's an old StarCraft 2 cheat code that, makes your characters invincible. But it's like, it's those kinds of mods, add-ons, the fact that we have all these spreadsheets laid out with these are the best talents to pick. This is like the best thing that Blizzard has had to. There's no really like exploration, discovery anymore. Like the content of Warcraft is strip mined before it's even released. And I mean, if you want to know everything that happens before the storyline or spell wise buffs, nerfs, the ideal spell rotation, the perfect gear for you, back in the day, what gems, enchants, what was that called when you were able to like transmogrify your stats, reforging.
Yeah.
The reforging, like so they added reforging into game in order to make the stats on your gear more interesting, and then somebody invented an add-on that made it just click and you have the ideal stats. I'm like, well, that was a waste of our time. So it's weird that the popularity and the passion that people have for Warcraft has almost ruined World of Warcraft, because why reinvent the wheel when the answers are all out there? And you can go to Icy Veins or Wowhead or any of these sites, and those sites do a wonderful service, and I use them, of course. But I don't sit there and try to figure out which talents are the best anymore. I just go to Icy Veins and read which ones are the best and click those.
Yeah, and I think there are loads of people who do it. I mean, I do it. Again, because I don't want to fairy craft about things, or I'm just like, yeah, this will help me, that's fine. It's even better if it's all like passive talents or anything like that, so I don't have to learn anything new.
I mean, in my very limited play time that I have now, it's like I don't min-max. As I'm leveling a toon, I pick the talents that are either passive or look really cool until I get to max level, and then when I decide like, hey, this is a toon that I actually want to learn how to play the proper way, in quotey fingers, then I look up the talents and the rotations and stuff like that. Until then, good enough is good enough.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see once Classic hits us all in August, how people are dealing with it over the Christmas period. If people are starting to raid and then there's no group and progression and things like that. I'm very curious to see how a world like that will hold up when a lot of people are maybe not playing it because of holidays or are playing it more. It will be really interesting to see how the game fares compared to Battle for Azeroth.
Yes, and I feel that one of the really cool things about Battle for Azeroth that I really appreciate Blizzard doing this is they went out on a limb and tried some new stuff with this expansion. Like they're like, let's forget about the box, let's blow that thing to hell, and just, this seems like it might be a cool idea, let's try it out with the neck piece and the Azerite gear. And it tanked. It did not work. And okay, that's fine. And now they're fixing it, and we're getting something else and something different with a new Heart of Azeroth coming out in 8.2. So it's like I applaud Blizzard for trying new things, because there are some things out there like the selfie feature in Warcraft that they looked at it and they said, hey, this might work really well. Let's put it in game. Oh, nobody uses it. Okay. That was kind of a waste. And then they put in something like transmogrification. Like, oh, I wonder if anybody will play, Barbie dress up with their tunes. Holy crap. That was like the best thing you could have added to the game. And then they put in void storage, and now it's completely obsolete. So they're constantly having to deal with a changing player base. I mean, it's difficult to find players that have actually been playing Warcraft since Classic, or even Burning Crusader Lich King now.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of the people that I talk to are Cataclysm or older when they're playing Warcraft. And so it's like the people who are playing Warcraft now are very different than the people who were playing Warcraft then, and even the people who are playing Warcraft then have very different expectations and needs from Warcraft now. And that, like I said, that it just sucks for Blizzard to have to deal with that kind of a changing dynamic in such a broad player base. That they can't ever appease everybody, and anything they do is going to be amplified in the echo chamber that is the internet, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, BlizzCon and stuff like that. A perfect example of this is, at the last BlizzCon when they announced the Diablo mobile game.
Yeah.
At first I'm like, ugh, really? It's a Diablo mobile? Okay, fine. And then I went and played it. I'm like, this is an awesome game. I'm totally psyched to have this. I get home and like my computer's melting down from all the vitriol hatred that Blizzard is getting. I was like, well, I did not see that coming. Obviously, Blizzard did not see that coming. I mean, there's no pleasing everybody, and you do what you can do. And when you're a public traded company, your stocks and what you're able to do rises and falls with public opinion.
Yeah, and I think, what Blizzard also has at the moment, I mean, Warcraft has been out for 15 years almost.
Yeah.
15 years, that's, someone who might have been born at the time that Warcraft was released, and then now they're probably playing it. They are growing up in a completely different world when it comes to games than we did so many years ago. I mean, I started my career on an Atari with Frogger, and so I don't even knew how to play because it was just like, well, I see some pixels, I'll just move around and see what it does. And
Absolutely.
And now, kids nowadays are so different when it comes to games and what they expect from games. So, Blizzard has that audience that, like you and I, who grew up with different types of games and seeing the progression in World of Warcraft. And then there's that group of gamers who are like, well, you can stick your Frogger, that's not for us. We have things like Fortnite and all these other things. They play games completely different than us. And they
Absolutely.
have different needs at that point in time, I think, also because, again, we've all been there 15 years ago when we didn't have the responsibility, and they are there now. So you have a very different type of player in the game.
Oh, an incredibly different type of player now, and a much different vocal community in the fact that you have people who have made their careers, which did not exist back in the day, off of playing your game over the internet and hoping to be entertaining enough to where people will donate money to them. That did not exist 15 years ago. There was no Twitch streaming or anything like that. I mean, hell, when Warcraft first started, podcasting was the newest and most awesome way that people in the community would reach out and spread their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, YouTube was just becoming a thing back in the day. So, I mean, that's why Leroy Jenkins was so huge, was, oh my gosh, look at this video on this new platform, YouTube.
And now it was like, oh my god, there are other people who like what I like?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, it was such like a revolution, and an evolution of gaming, and the way it is consumed has grown over the last 15 years. And I don't care how good a game is, you cannot dedicate your life to playing a game 8 hours a day and still be interesting or interested in it, 2-3 years down the line. Like, it just you can't do that. It's like eating pizza for breakfast, lunch, dinner every day. I mean, my God, I love pizza, but not that much.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I think we've talked a lot about how WoW has changed. Let's bring it back to current games or at least, Battle for Azeroth. What are you most impressed with in Battle for Azeroth at the moment, and what are you the least impressed with?
Most impressed with the environments, the music, and the story. Are the Blizzard knocked it out of the ballpark. Also, the events leading up to Battle for Azeroth with the Warbringers series. While I was not excited about the collector's edition, the book that we got with the collector's edition, or online if you didn't want to buy that, the Good War or the Good Fight and the Effigy or whatever it's called. So they did an amazing job, and I was very, very excited for how they tied in Battle for Azeroth to the players and why we're important. I haven't heard this much chatter about faction pride and what's going on ever before in game. Way, way, way better than Warlords of Draenor, where people are like, wait, what the fuck is happening? Like, we're time traveling, but we're not. We're in another dimension, kind of, but we're not. What the hell? Like, so the way Battle for Azeroth is set up is amazing, and so I was I'm very excited, and I'm still all in on this expansion. I really dig it. The raids have been great. The storyline linking up the raids has been great. The fact that you have to play both Horde and Alliance in order to get the full story, the development of characters, the aesthetics of the towns, the talent changes, Azerite armor. Yeah, it sucks. I have to say that's one of the things that just, honestly, it kind of just pisses me off at this point. Not because I'm trying to min-max it, or I don't have my necklace all the way leveled up or anything like that. It just kind of similar to how we're saying, like, the internet has all the answers, is that every time I get a piece of gear, I feel like I need to go onto the internet and be like, okay, which one should I pick? And that's a downer. Like, that's not interesting. It's just annoying. And sadly, that's kind of how all talent trees have been in Warcraft for a really long time. But now I have to do it not once I hit max level, but every time I get a piece of gear. It's, okay, what should I pick? And now I need to have 2 sets because, like in Legion, it was cool to have the weapons and stuff like that because they would switch when you switch specs. But now the Azerite armor doesn't switch, so now I have to have multiple sets of Azerite armor in my bags, and I need to make bargain. But do I actually want to min-max this crap? Does it really matter if I'm wearing red gear, but I need to run protection? In a dungeon because I just don't want to sit through the queue time of being a DPS. So that's one of the things that I feel, while I applaud Blizzard for the effort of doing the Azerite gear and trying to give us some form of character progression past and max level, they missed the mark. And so it's like, great job, Blizzard. This was a swing and a miss. You got 2 more pitches. Let's keep going. And so I'm really hoping that 8.2 will be the knock it out of the ballpark like they did with the legendaries. Well, not the legendaries. That system in Legion I was not a fan of either. Random legendary drops suck, but the artifacts. That was beautiful. And I think that's one of the problems that a lot of people have with Battle for Azeroth right now, is because it's not as clean as Legion was with the artifacts. The artifacts were beautiful, gorgeous. They were a Rembrandt out here. And then, we go over here, if you go from a Rembrandt to like a Picasso, and you're like, wait, what the hell is this? I can appreciate it for the skill and what the artist was going for, but I don't like abstract art. So, if you're wondering where I was going for with that analogy, that's kind of one of the big bummers for me for Battle for Azeroth is the Azerite armor has not made me want to try to min-max out my armor set, gear, or anything like that. I just get what I get. I pick the talent, the part of the Azerite that I think will do the best, and I just soldier on with whatever I get. And that's not compelling gameplay.
No.
So.
And I think, look at Blizzard. I mean, Warlords, it started off quite great. Everyone's really enthusiastic, and then stuff happened, and a lot of people were like, I don't like this, I don't like what's happening here. And I think they've learned from that. I mean, you saw with Legion how that changed, and I think with BFA, they've made some really good choices. And then there are a few things that they thought was going to work out well, and now they've even said themselves that they're not happy with how certain things have gone. And I think that's when you get like a quite a vocal community nowadays.
Well, why did you know better?
Well,
it's like we were telling you this during the beta. It's like, yeah, you were, but we're still. We can't change everything.
No, exactly. I think that's the thing. It's still a company, and I think a lot of people and players, among myself, probably don't realize how much work goes into one tiny thing.
Yeah.
And pulling it all back is probably a lot more work than we realize. But I'm sure, I don't want to be like a fangirl by saying it, because I used to hate people like that in the past who just said everything was amazing, because it's not. Of course there are flaws. But I have a feeling that Blizzard is going to pull this straight again, and just, they've learned from it, and they will change that. There will probably be another little thing that is not going to go how we want it to with the next expansion or with the next patch even, but it's it's an evolving thing.
I would say I believe Warlords of Draenor is the only expansion where Blizzard started off with a particular concept or something, like trying something relatively on the new side, and then it would kind of crash and burn, or there'd be something about that particular expansion that people just didn't like. And then they would make a change in patch 0.2 or 0.3, and it would just flip the script on that expansion, and it would end strong until that expansion went too long, and then it was like, oh my gosh, why are we still here? Perfect example would be Mists of Pandaria was just like that. Everybody loved Mists of Pandaria, and then freaking hated Mists of Pandaria, and then loved Mists of Pandaria, and then we were in Mists of Pandaria for too freaking long. Same thing with Cataclysm, except they all started off, loved the zones of Cataclysm, then hated the zones of Cataclysm, and then hated the dungeons of Cataclysm, and then still hated the dungeons of Cataclysm. And then LFR came out, and oh my gosh, everything went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think Blizzard is constantly trying to change WoW that it becomes interesting enough, but sometimes that can just backfire on them.
Exactly. So I do feel for the rest of this expansion, we are looking towards that upturn, that let's fix it. Like, okay, we put out a problem, we see all the holes in the Swiss cheese, now let's fill it up and try it again. And in the past, they've always done a great job. Well, I can't say always, because Warlords of Draenor, they gave up on that one. But they made up for Warlords of Draenor with Legion. And getting Legion out. And so that's one of the reasons, honestly, why Warlords of Draenor was such a dip of an expansion. It's because they essentially gave up on Warlords to work and fix all the problems of Warlords in Legion.
Yeah.
If they had dedicated more time and more energy to developing the story, the raids, the dungeon content, and all the stuff that they planned for Warlords, it would have been a much better expansion. That and the fact that they gambled on garrisons being a renewable source of content, and it turned out to be almost the worst thing they could have put into game.
Mm-hmm.
But even the end product of what the garrisons were that we got was not what they had announced initially about the garrisons. And so I feel that was more of a tech limitations and time pressure that they weren't able to get it right.
Yeah, and I feel like we sometimes get that with a few other things.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so at least mostly positive with everything that's happening in Battle for Azeroth, which is good. But I think it's they need to hear the things that people don't like, otherwise it will never get better.
Oh, absolutely.
So, do you have any good tips for the listeners when it comes to Battle for Azeroth? Maybe something, how you feel that people, not how they should play, but that might a different point of view. I'm not telling anyone what to do, but you know what I mean, or something that you've discovered, or just anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, the main thing that I have discovered and have been really, really, really enjoying in Battle for Azeroth is experiencing the entire game. If you are solely a Horde or solely an Alliance player, switch to the other faction. If just to get a character up to max level and play through the storyline quests, you are missing out. This is not a subjective opinion. This is absolute fact. You are missing out if you do not play a character of the opposing faction and actually read and pay attention to the story as you go. A huge case in point to this is I power leveled my priest through dungeons and stuff like that, missed a whole bunch, had to go back, replayed through them at max level, and was completely engaged and loved that storyline. So you can absolutely skip over huge vital swaths of this expansion that will be that engaging and fun gameplay that you might be looking for. So if you don't already have characters on both sides of the aisle, make sure that you do that. The other thing that I've always been a huge advocate of is Warcraft is your game. Play it how you want to play it. Don't let other people dictate to you how you should play it or what you should be doing. Or even Blizzard, I've heard in the past, and I find this so discouraging when other people were just like, if I can't get tier gear from LFR, then I'm just going to quit this game. And you're like, why is the tier gear so vital for you if all you're doing is LFR? Do you need to have a high item level or the perfect Azerite gear in order to run, do old transmog runs or farm mounts or pet battle or whatever that you want to do? Don't be limited by the fact that you might not have access to everything stop you from playing and enjoying the game that you want to play. Right now, I don't care about endgame rating. And so it's so freeing to not worry about what my item level is. I can just go out and experience the game that I want to experience. And I find it's very freeing and encouraging and makes you want to come back and play the game more and more because you're not straddled with I have to get this reputation up or I have to play this particular raid or go through LFR or anything like that. It's just, this game is so there's not just one facet to World of Warcraft. Play what you want to play and find friends to play it with. Don't, just because we have looking for group and looking for raid in game doesn't mean you have to use those systems. And a lot of times it's so much easier to just use those systems, get into the dungeon, say hi guys, start pulling, kill everything, thanks for the run at the end, and you're done. I do that on a frequent basis. But when you get a chance, I always encourage people, instead of just jumping into looking for group, throw out in trade chat or in guild chat or across your BattleNet friends. Hey, I'm running this dungeon or I'm doing this transmog run. Does anybody want to join me? Reach out and make sure, and make this that social game that allows you to continue to have those community connections.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of saying it, and I think it's really important that people realize that it's still important to have fun and don't limit yourself. I think some people get so caught up with everything around it that they just forget to have fun.
Yeah. Well, and also, okay, so here that's definitely true. And the other thing I would say is, now, if you haven't gone back and leveled a new character in a while, level a new character. Get an allied race, Magar Orc, an Iron Dwarf, Zandalari, High Mountain, Void Elf, whatever the other elf is. I feel so ashamed I have one. Nightborn. Because the changes that Blizzard has made to the leveling system is really, really awesome. The fact that the zones scale with you is incredible, and it really changes that experience and makes it a lot more fun than what you remember. It's not a slog anymore. And the fact that you can pick, hey, I want to go to Burning Crusade, or I want to go to Northrend, or I want to go to Pandaria or do Cataclysm content. The fact that that's so freeing is great for just leveling up a new character and maybe trying out a class that you haven't run before.
Yeah. I mean, we have so much stuff nowadays to make everything more fun and easy. I think easygoing. If you want your challenge, just try Classic.
Yeah, precisely.
Exactly. Okay. Now, I'm always very curious about this one, especially with someone who's been in the game for so long, and has built up different communities. But what has the Warcraft community meant to you?
I mean, it has been such a roller coaster over the years, as I mentioned, the fact where, like, I used to feel like I was a boss, like I was a raid leader. I had 24 people that looked to me to assemble and educate and direct them on how to destroy dragons in game. It is, I'm not saying I was on a power trip, but I was totally on a power trip. I mean, it was something, and that it created so much drama and anxiety and ecstasy and like all these different things. Like I said, the community has it almost ruined my marriage. It has brought in and welcomed my son with open arms. It has been a place that I can go for solace. It's been a place that I've needed to avoid. It's everything that everything I put into the community, you get back. The more I engage with the community, the more fulfilling and the greater relationships I'm able to build, and the friendships I've been able to build, are just incredible. The fact that, I'm able to say that I have friends literally around the world because of the community. Like, nothing beats that feeling of the very first time. I was at BlizzCon and somebody just yelled like, "Ringmaster Kevin!" and like tackle hugged me, and like it's an incredible. I'm like, I have no idea who the hell you are. But awesome. Hi. How are you? Thanks for the hug. That was fantastic. Um, so, I mean, it has really been everything, and right now the community, it's such an inviting place that I look forward to logging in, and now with the Battle.net account and how everything's set up, is it's not just the community in Warcraft anymore. It's also Heroes of the Storm and Overwatch and Hearthstone and all that stuff. And I mean, it just puts a big smile on my face every time I log in and I see all these different players that I've been interacting with over the last, like 11, 12 years, that are still my friends. And on top of that, like, it also brings a little bit of sadness because, over the years, we've lost people. Mm-hmm. Like, I've gone to in-game funerals and or I should say memorials, and there's some people that I was really close with that all of a sudden logged off, and like, their name is still on my friends list, but they haven't been on Battle.net for 7 years. And so it really, it's meant so much to me. It's one of the reasons why I definitely continue to podcast when, there are those really hard weeks at work, or, just sometimes you sit down and be like, what, what am I doing? Like, do I still want to do this? And I think about all the awesome times that I've had at BlizzCon, at launch events, meeting with Blizzard employees, meeting with fans of the show, speaking with just random people out everywhere, and it's really inspiring to make me want to continue being an active part of the community. It's not something that lets you just sit on your laurels and reap the benefits of. It's like, no, like, get out there. The more you engage, the more you get from it. And there are very few communities out there that are as open and as welcoming as the Warcraft community. And it seems weird because we all think of like LFR and looking for group and, like the absolute jackwagons in game, but they're not the community. Those are asshole trolls that just, sit by themselves, and they get off making other people mad. Like, that's their form of entertainment, is griefing other people, but they're not the community. They're what the community protects you against. And so if anybody like is having a hard time in Warcraft dealing with assholes in game, then surround yourself with the positive community that exists. Be part of Mega City 1. Don't live in the wasteland.
And I think especially if you join like Twitter with the Warcraft community.
Oh yeah,
find so much positivity there. I've never seen a community that positive as on Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, we're coming to the final question for tonight. What is your whisper? And for those who don't know what a whisper is, it can be anything really. It's just anything you want to share. So it can be fairy crafting, it can be a little bit of a tinfoil hat, it can be a wish that you hope that will happen in game, or just an idea. What is your whisper?
My whisper is that we get a full circle story arc with a great completion for Vol'jin. That character was cut down in his prime, and we never, and the story is still out there. And I know they say like, oh, Vol'jin's dead. Yeah, I know he's dead, but dead don't mean dead in Warcraft.
Exactly.
We have a lot of dead characters that we're still interacting with. And while I'm sure this is quite a bit tinfoil hat and never, ever, 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 ever in the cards, Blizzard, if you want to blow my mind, is that you have Vol'jin be a counter Lich King. or something like that. Like have him be in charge of his own like undead race of something out there. Like him and Kalia Menethil or whatever are the new leaders of the Forsaken together. You know, I don't know. It would be incredible, and I just want a really good ending to his story.
I couldn't agree more. I truly think that we've missed out with Fulgen, and I'm happy to see that he's coming back a little bit more. So, yeah, I'm all for that. I think that's a really good one. Kevin, if people are all like, oh my god, I need to listen to this man more, and I need to listen to the Darkmoon Herald, where can they find you on the internet?
You can follow my tweets that may or may not be Warcraft related on Twitter at KevinOldScratch. There are links to all of the Darkmoon Herald stuff on our website, darkmoonherald.com. You can also check us out. We try to stream the recordings of our episodes on Twitch on Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. If that's a little bit too early for you, it's 9 a.m. Eastern time. Or 2 p.m. If you're where Sil lives. So make sure that you check it out. It's twitch.tv/Darkmoon Herald, and you can go back and watch some of the old VODs that have been saved there, or iTunes Darkmoon Herald, leave reviews and all that good stuff. We're going through a couple format changes right now, trying to freshen up the show and making it a little bit more, just crank up the awesome is what we're trying to do. So there have been some growing pains, similar to Blizzard. Some things have worked, some things haven't worked, but we'll get it right in version 8.2.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Absolutely. It's always such a delight talking to you, Sil, and thank you for coming on our show, the Darkmoon Herald. Those episodes are actually being released right now. So the first two parts of that show have come out. Act 3 will be coming out soon. And like I said, back in the day when I was listening to you on the Girls Gone Wild podcast, you were so inspirational. That I loved hearing you talk about your take on Warcraft and what are the best and worst boobies in game. I mean, it was those kinds of like fun and zany segments that I'm like, you know what, that they're doing it right, and it's something that I would want to incorporate into my own. So thank you for being having me on the show and being so inspirational throughout my own podcasting journey.
Oh, thank you. I'm all feeling like blushing now. Thank you so much. And like with anything, because we've been internet friends for such a long time and podcasting friends, I'm just really happy that as a fellow podcaster, I've got to know you, and I've got to know Sal and Oksana and Bubba Fleur, and I'm just so blessed to have you all talk to me, and even if it was over Twitter or anything. So yeah, I think the podcasting community is really, really great to be part of. So, anyone listening out there, you want to become a podcaster, go for it.
Absolutely. There's no time like the present, and nothing to stop you except yourself. And so if you have a good idea, run with it. If you want help, reach out to me on Twitter or email or anything like that. There have been a couple people who have came to me for some advice and now have started their own podcasts. So this isn't an exclusive thing. I don't battle for listeners. Like, no, you can't take my listeners. Don't. No, absolutely not. This, I am here to help because, like I said, the more you put into the community, the more you get from it. And if I can help somebody else follow a passion of theirs, absolutely I will.
Yeah, no, that's really, really great. All right, I am going to thank you again. Thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Oh, you're welcome. Just remember to ninja that poop. Don't stand in it.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kevin. It was so good talking to him again. As you can see with the length of the interview, it was a lot of fun. And if you want to hear me on his and Sal's show, the Darkmoon Herald, make sure that you download the latest episodes, and you can hear more banter going on in that one. Right, but you guys had a lot of stuff to say about, how has WoW changed over the years for yourself. What did you want from the game back in the day, and what do you want now from it, really? If you could make the game perfect for yourself, how would you change it? And Twitter responses were amazing. So Exclavier said, I started almost a decade ago and had more time to raid and grind content with friends. Now I spend most of my time playing solo and struggling to find any time to commit to raid. I think I've done one LFR this X-Pack. More mobile tools is my wish. Pet battles, crafting, etc. Oh, I would love more mobile tools for that. I like things like that, it's the same as sending mission followers out or whatever you call them. So good. It just saves so much time. Sai said, for me, I miss some of the RPG elements. Managing arrows and working with class trainers was fun to me and really added to the experience, in my opinion. I felt like I was preparing for my next adventure and just added to that adventure fantasy I play WoW for. Well, you get some sort of, arrows back, I guess, in Classic. But no, I understand where you're coming from with the RPG elements. Kristen said, I really want player housing. I'd like to have instance player housing in which I can pick any zone to have a home in. I would pick the Jade Forest in Pandaria and you can get things for your home via quests, dungeons, PvP, islands, basically anything. To which Reina Praise and Play said agreed 10,000,000%. And she wasn't the only one. And yeah, I think player housing is one of those things that we've heard a lot. So, I think Blizzard does listen to the players and they're not unaware of this. So who knows? Maybe this BlizzCon this year, guys, player housing, who knows? Slipperite said, I like most of what has happened in my 10 years of play. My activities and friendships have grown and changed nicely. I'd love to see more robust community matching tools for busy people to find guilds, communities, discords, etc. Like a match profile for your WoW needs. That is very clever. I actually think that's really good because, in all fairness, I think the guild finder tool is not that great in game, and it's the same for discords. I do believe that Discord at the moment has a tool out that you can actually search for things. So that's Discord doing something about it, but the guild finder tool, that could be really improved. And the final comment from Artenis said, allow flying at max level, behind a gold cost is fine, without all this Pathfinder malarkey. I would spend so much more time in game if I didn't feel so anchored to the ground in current max level contents. I think we all feel like that, but I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. You never know. Maybe they will change it and now you have to buy it with gold. I mean, it's another way of Blizzard to make a little bit of money if they want to put a hefty price stamp on that. Or maybe a combination. You can do it by either paying a lot of gold, like think of, like the big boy mount, or maybe you can do your Pathfinder stuff. Maybe it's one of the two. You can do it either or. That might be an idea. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. I always love getting your tweets, and emails still would be nice if I ever get them. Anyhow, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that in the following ways. You can find the podcast on whispersofwar.podbean.com, or go to Twitter at whispers_of_war, or my personal one, McMonkeys with a Z. You can email the show whispersofwarpodcast@gmail.com, and Twitch will happen soon when I get a little bit less busy. Go to twitch.tv/McMonkeys with 2 Z's. So yeah, that's where you can find me, and next week I'm talking to James and we're talking all about our favorite expansion pack and why, and favorite races in World of Warcraft, so make sure that you tune in. Bye bye.
Well, fuck this shit, let's go.
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.